Shalom again, everybody. Rabbi Ariel here from the KosherTorah School, found online at KosherTorah.com. I want to continue sharing with you some important ideas which need to be put into practice about psychic self-defense. I think in the world that we are living in, the greatest danger that we're facing now is not so much this or that flare-up of violence, political instability, and the like that goes on around the world. There are enough problems with all of those areas, but they're all built upon a single foundation. No matter where you want to look, problems in the West, problems in the East, problems in the Middle East, wherever, everything is built upon a foundation of deception, lies. The amount of lies that are perpetrated are fulfilling the purpose for their existence. What do you think lying is all about? Just to get you to believe something that's not true? So what? Who cares what people believe? It doesn't really matter what someone believes. It really doesn't matter how people feel. What really matters is what people do. And if you can manipulate the way people think, and if you can manipulate the way people feel, then obviously you manipulate the way they behave. That is the big problem going on around the world. If we are on the border of a violent global explosion, it's simply because that explosion is happening first in the individual minds and hearts of people like ourselves. In other words, the dark side, the real dark side, is very active out there. Look at where it has brought us. It used to be rationally minded people with some semblance of morality and righteousness in their heart would never think or fathom or contemplate or certainly not agree to or condone mass murder. I don't care whose mass murder. What difference does it make? Everybody fundamentally would say, no, that's wrong. And yet we can twist and we can turn the way people think and say, well, you know, this group of people have it coming to them. This group of people deserve it. And on it goes. Do you succumb to such ideas? Have you been seduced by that dark side, which is allowing you to silently condone mass violence? Oh, really? Well, guess what? Welcome to the dark side. Now, there is a time and a purpose for all things under heaven. Yeah, that's true. There's a time for war, and there's a time for peace, and there's a time for love and a time for hate. Yeah, got it. But when you allow the evil into your heart to say, you know what, good for them that deserve what they're getting, that is where the problem comes. What was the name of that famous German pastor in the days of the Nazis? You're going to forgive me for botching the quote, but I'm sure you might have heard it. He says, originally they came for the communists, but I didn't care because I wasn't the communist, and they came for this one, but I didn't care because I wasn't them either. They came for the third group, but I didn't care because it wasn't me. And then finally they came for me, but there was no one left to care for. There's no one left to care. I think that's where we're at right now. I think that dark, deceptive spirit is what's come back now. And let's talk Kabbalistically. Let's talk mystically. For those who've ever practiced any form of the expansion of consciousness, I don't care what religion, I don't care what spiritual practice, what is the purpose of it all? The answer is to experience higher dimensional realities in the truth of their being. In other words, enlightenment. But in quote, enlightenment must be understood outside of any kind of a cultural context. Let's be honest, and you can search YouTube and the internet for proof of what I'm about to say. Many people have had out-of-body experiences. Many people have had near-death experiences. And how curiously convenient that people of a specific religious persuasion always see the higher dimensions in the afterlife within the context of their own religious persuasions. Catholics always see Catholic heaven. Protestants always see a Protestant heaven. Jews always see a Jewish heaven, and on it goes. How many heavens are there? How many different places are there up there? No. What we are seeing, this is what in our Kabbalah language we call the lower Garden of Eden. It is a dimensional plane which is a reflection of our present limited and subjective context and understanding. Real enlightenment transcends beyond that and must ascend to a place we call the upper Garden of Eden, where in which we transcend the limitations of all the individual divisions. Remember, even Carl Jung spoke about the collective unconscious and said that there are racial subdivisions within the collective unconscious. We all experience them, whether we like it or not. But we must recognize the singularity which underlies them all. That's why I always focus on that one name of God, which is the singularity of them all. It should not be debated with theology or doctrine or anything of the kind. It should be the anchor for the pursuit of ultimate truth. In our Torah tradition, we state that the Hebrew word for truth, which is emet, Alef, Mem, Tav, is one of God's most holy names. It's an interesting thing if you look at words and things like that. That word emet in Hebrew, the first letter is the letter Alef. Alef is a funny letter in Hebrew in that it has no sound to it whatsoever. You can't pronounce an Alef because it has no sound. Some say it's the sound of ah. No, that's the vowel sound that's applied to the letter. But the letter Alef is symbolized as being the inhalation prior to being the exhalation of a letter. Now, it is a letter, but that's its symbolic application. That's the Aleph. The Hebrew, in Hebrew, I should say, the Bible, the Torah, begins with the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which is the letter Bet. And Bet is symbolized to be a house. It's the letter Bet of Bereshit in the beginning. Because we say this dimensional plane, heavens and the earth, that which we know and understand, is the second of realities. And there is a higher reality represented by this secret hidden letter, silent letter, Aleph. And that's the ultimate reality of things. That's this higher consciousness that we seek to experience above all the realities in the heavens and the earth, symbolized by the Hebrew letter Bet. And so that is considered the universal Torah, the ultimate truth. How does one seek that? It's the perception, the goal. It is the pursuit of truth, which means the expansions of the power of mind and consciousness. This has always been part of our Torah Kabbalistic, the prophetic path of expanding the powers of the mind to be very, very clearly discerning, rational, analytic, and at the same time, psychically intuitive. You see, when we pursue vision or dream, this is very practically performed these days in analytical psychology through something called active imagination, a very common Jungian trait that we teach and practice. But if and when you go off into a daydream and you have a trance or a vision or some type of active imaginative experience, What does it mean? Well, I saw this in a dream, and what? It's very important that we recognize the symbolic nature of dreams and images. We know this from the Bible. Excuse me. I'm still recovering from that virus I had for how long now, whatever. Joseph's dream in the Bible, or I should say Joseph interpreting Pharaoh's dream in the Bible. It was all symbolic. Actually, Joseph's dreams before that were also symbolic. Nebuchadnezzar's dream was symbolic. In the Christian tradition, obviously following in its original Jewish context, Peter is recorded in the book of Acts as having a dream, also symbolic in context. But people have their agendas, and they so are emotionally convinced that their dreams are literal. No one's going to convince anybody of something they don't want to be convinced of. That's just the way it is. But dreams require analysis. They require contemplation to understand the nature of the symbols that we see and what and why they appear to us in our minds as such. And this is a contemplative exercise which requires intuitive psychic clarity, as well as a rational and analytical approach to things. These are the two lobes or functions of the brain. In the Kabbalah, they are referred to as the Sefirot of Chokhmah on the right and Bina on the left, intuition and intellect. And we have a process which we call Sechel Tenuda, which is oscillating consciousness, which is a very practical and relevant psychological process of contemplation, beginning with a thought and analyzing it, and analyzing it again, trying to strip it of all emotional content. When I mean strip it, I don't mean to actually take that emotional content away, but to recognize an emotional component to the thoughts we think, to recognize it and its influence, to completely understand the way our minds work. And then we can delve into the unconscious with such pursuit of clarity and extract from it greater insight and revelation. And this process is how we cultivate expanded consciousness and, if you will, enlightenment. And I might add, this technique, which I'm describing to you now, is an old prophetic Kabbalah technique. It has been used by masters of the prophetic school forever. Those who ascended into the Pardes, as recorded in the Talmud Tractate Hagigah, performed this. The great sages throughout the centuries performed this. The great rabbis, even ones like Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of the famous Shulchan Aruch Code of Jewish Law, observed this. The founder of the Hasidic movement, the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer, performed this. Unfortunately, none of those who followed in his footsteps do. They've embraced the philosophical speculation, which, in my opinion, takes them completely off the mark. But that's going to have to be another topic for another time. Again, philosophy, speculation, fairy tales, stories, they all have their place in lower levels of mind and consciousness. They're certainly not higher expositions of experiential truths. And that might offend some. I'm never so politically correct that I care to or not to offend people. I guess if you're going to be offended, then that's your issue, not mine. But with that being said, expanding consciousness needs to be more rational and analytical so as to prevent the influences of others from dominating our thoughts to provoke or promote our behaviors in ways which are fundamentally wrong and destructive. And so today, when we want to declare right from wrong or righteous from wicked, if you look at both sides of those definitions, you're going to see the lack of clarity and the manipulation on both sides. And this is what's dangerous. How many people are waving the patriotic flag and believe that what they're doing is right, when if you take a few steps back to pause and consider, the clarity of the morality of your position may not be so black and white as you think. If we are entering into a period of global judgment, it is to clarify this element of human consciousness in the minds and hearts of those who are willing to evolve and grow. For those of you who want me to, talk about the other stuff, the higher forces that be out there, the ones who are really behind what's going on here on Earth. When we talk about the coming of an, end quote, messianic era, and again, we're so attached to interpreting that to some guy who is going to come and therefore prove to the world by force that his religion is the right and only one. So the Christian Messiah is going to condemn everyone who's not Christians. The Jewish Messiah is going to teach everybody Judaism, and the Islamic Messiah is going to make everybody Muslim. Okay, yeah, great. No, and no. But, that, I guess, makes me the blasphemer for all of the world religions. What can I say? I'm not waiting for an individual to come, regardless of what our religions teach about that. May such a religious individual or secular individual come, by all means. I guess that's feasible. I don't know what will or will not be, but I will tell you this. The higher powers that be are watching and monitoring human consciousness. They exist in higher dimensional realities and interact with our dimension as, if you will, the teachers of Schoolhouse Earth, with the specific goal, the specific intent to elevate human consciousness and to see who among us is going to raise up and recognize the singularity, to embrace the Alef above all the worlds within the Bet, and to know and understand the one true singularity, and be able to embrace that universally, so that we will no longer have to, in the words of Jeremiah the prophet, argue and say, know the Lord, for they will all know the Lord. Not as some guy sitting on a phantasaical cloud somewhere throwing lightning bolts. We need to transcend all these limited thoughts and all of these mythologies to come to the one true ultimate reality. We need to weed out the psychic influences that are deceiving us and enslaving the minds. There is no greater psychic self-defense than the cultivation of the powers within the mind that truly bring calmness to the heart and liberation to our behaviors, where we are no longer pushed, motivated, manipulated, and deceived into acting in ways which are harmful to others, to ourselves. Okay? For those who want that psychic reality, well, I guess that's what we're here to cultivate, and I hope to experience. But the rest is up to you. So I hope that what I have to offer in my books and other videos can be of some, contribution to your growth and stuff. I certainly don't want to contribute to anyone's anger and violence and hatred. I do read your comments. And I know the religious extremists who post their comments from this religious point of view and that religious point of view. Yeah. I get it. You have to, you are compelled to express your religious views, for you're so absolutely convinced that your way is the only right way. Okay, I get it. I understand. But don't allow that narrowness of mind direct you into a narrowness of heart and even a more narrow expression of behavior to be hateful, to not be helpful to those in need, because that is the great message. So I'll leave it at that and bless you all, that hopefully one way or another, you'll open up the minds, you'll cultivate higher and deeper consciousness and truth. And I hope and pray it can make a difference, because each and every one of us has what it takes to make a difference. And I hope and pray that that's indeed what we will do. Thank you all for listening. With God's blessings, we should only hear good things for us all. See you in our next class. God's blessings again. Shalom.